Welcome to Not Your Ordinary Parts, a podcast where we talk about hard things associated with the human experience with the goal of increasing awareness, growth, and healing. You may hear information from professionally licensed therapists, life coaches, healers, doctors, etc. This information is not medical advice or therapy and is not meant to replace actual therapy or instructions given by a doctor or personal therapist. I'm your host, Jalon Johnson. My guest today is Claudia Goetzelmann. Claudia is a yogi, a photographer, and an end-of-life doula, a spiritual life coach, and a psychological counselor whose work connects people, art, purpose, meaning, and healing. Having experience in a range of healing approaches, Claudia believes that much of what we struggle with in our adult lives stems from patterns and belief systems that are formed in childhood, and she helps her clients identify what lies beneath those patterns. Claudia uses compassionate inquiry to reveal the critical nature of the body-mind relationship and gives her clients the opportunity to heal root causes. Claudia believes healing is not just optional, but that it is gifted to us daily by turning inward with curiosity, and she is here to assist on the journey back to wholeness. So Claudia, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
I gave a brief introduction, but so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better, would you mind giving us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got to who and where you are today?
Well, right now, as we're recording in California, I'm born German. I'm a nomad. I've lived in many places around the world, and I lived in California for many years. Returned back home because my dad was sick with cancer and he passed away recently. And right now I'm back here in California.
Thank you for sharing that. As we've gotten to know each other and we've shared space with each other, something that stood out to me a lot was that you believe that much of what we struggle with in our adult lives stems from our childhood belief systems and patterns. Based on your own life experience and the work that you do and the clients that you've helped, how is it possible, in your opinion, to get to what lies beneath and to get to those patterns and belief systems, and how difficult can that be?
It's a very rich question. Thank you for that. To dive in right away. How do we get to that? At the base of everything, I truly believe it needs to be safety. Safety within self, to self, and safety within another person. So this unprocessed implicit material can actually come up and become explicit. And then through that, we can work with it and it can be integrated into the whole of us.
Now, if somebody is unfamiliar with feeling safe or even what safety really means, like let's say someone is just beginning their journey and all of this is new to them, like how would you even describe safety for someone who, may have a history of trauma?
Yeah. So for that, I think it's very important not to take the person into the body right away. Like, what does it mean? Even like, I could ask you, what does it mean for you to be safe, feel safe? Or if you maybe reflect back, what was it for you 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? I'm sure your relationship has really changed. If somebody asked you, what does it mean to feel safe? So, when we're little and we perceive the world and this drama, the meaning we give to a situation, often there happens a disconnect. Our body holds the emotion and we have to start living in our head because it's not safe anymore to access the emotions. The pain is way too big. So we just live up here, and that's the disconnect. So when I start working with people, I would ask them, how is it to be in your space? Just orient yourself. How is it to take up space in a very familiar, in your room? Just look at maybe a plant Look at it with fresh eyes. How does that feel? Notice the quality of the air, the distant sound, something like that. And so that sort of creates a sense of, the nervous system responds and says, oh, yeah, I know that there is no imminent threat. I can relax a little.
You mentioned if someone lives in their head, how is the nervous system and not being in your body, how can that be a connection, or what is that can cause someone to live in their head?
What can cause them to live in their head?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we start? So, example, there is, you are 4 years old and you have an interaction at sport, and it's not often the outside. It might be the moment is gone. Nobody would notice the moment you drop the ball. Somebody laughs at you. You're not in a team of some sport. But the meaning you give it inside, that's where this interruption suddenly happens. Suddenly you give the meaning. You're like, I'm a loser. I can't play this sport. And because of that, nobody likes me. I'm not lovable. I don't matter. People overlook me. Whatever all the constellations. And so there's suddenly this disconnect. So then your body stores the emotions, right? But we justify, well, if I play harder, then maybe I will be likable. You assess the situation solely by your intellectual capabilities. And so the disconnect is there. And then out of that forms the coping strategy and the pattern which sort of inform our lives when we're little. That will save us. We abandon ourselves, our authentic self. But then later on in life, it becomes the roadblock.
That sounds like those patterns and belief systems that form in early childhood that can create our realities when we're adults. And those things could be based on, something that a feeling or an emotion or a part of us that was fragmented from our true self, like you mentioned. So you help people to go back to those moments and release whatever burden it is that they're carrying that may be altering their reality.
And that is a very gentle and slow process. Mm-hmm. Because again, if we start working together, first we need to create a safe container. So we co-regulate. So back to the nervous system. Even so, we don't speak about this. If I'm here and I'm frazzled, you suddenly will pick up my energy. Mm. And you will perceive it as not safe. Maybe you get even triggered and you're like, oh my God, it's the same already. This is all nonverbal. This is all in our, our system, in our nervous system. But you may perceive then, wow, there's nothing changed. This person is acting exactly as my coworker, as my mother, as da. So we will not be able to have the safety, and your body will not allow to connect to that material. And you will stay in your head. So it is my task as a therapist or facilitator or practitioner to create that safe container. This is, for me, this is super, super, super important. I need to do my work. The way I come to my clients, even the way I come to this recording today. I need to be grounded. I need to be in self. And then through that, we can have a beautiful conversation.
Thank you for sharing that. A little bit more about you. You're a yogi. What exactly is a yogi if someone doesn't know?
Well, I love doing yoga. It's part of my self-care routine, because so when I sit with clients, a lot is presented, and I need to move that energy through me and out of me. I need to release it back into nature, the earth, so it doesn't fester in me, because it's not mine. And so that again is really, really important. So I have a yoga practice, and I basically almost do it every day.
Right. And you're also a photographer. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was my first calling, my first career. And just recently, I gave myself this permission to say, I am still a photographer, and I'm also a facilitator, therapist, practitioner. And so, yes, I'm a nomad. I lived in many places around the world. I shot fashion advertising. And maybe you wonder, or your listeners are wondering, oh my God, how did she transfer to become a therapist? But the thing is, as a photographer, I have to connect with people. I have to actually already right there create that safe container, because I want something from my subjects. I want to, have them to relax, and I want to take a picture. So I realized, maybe 8 years ago, that I had this epiphany when I made the step into this world, into this new career, that this is one of my superpowers. Connect with people.
So, being that you have this ability to connect with people, and you do so many things. Another thing that you do is you're an end-of-life doula. And I don't think I had heard of that before you. And maybe you could explain what an end-of-life doula is, and what capacity you have in that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So end-of-life doula, I mean, we have birthing doulas. Everybody knows that. And at the end of life, we can also have a doula. If you would hire me, I would accompany you maybe for 3 months, and we would work on all the parts, the important parts. Maybe there's a dream you wanted to do, you wanted to fulfill a trip. Maybe you can still do a trip. Maybe there is something you need, a relationship you need to mend. I would help you and support you to mend that relationship. Maybe you need to address your legacy. We talk about how is this process really going to look like, your actual death, leading up to death. What is your, vision of this transition? And it's a very touchy subject, because we live in a society where nobody wants to address this. Because we're actually immortal, right? Society tells us we're never aging, we're actually getting younger. And I mean, there's people who aim to be 120. Fine. But there is something so rich to engage on the topic of death, because it makes us realize what is missing and what is important. And when we really go there courageously and bravely and look at it, what comes out of it is that only love matters. The way we show up to ourselves, to our beloved ones, to the world around us, that is what's actually left at the very end. Nothing else matters. And I just had this experience with my dad. So it is very fresh in my heart, actually, to speak about this.
Thank you for sharing that. And you did mention that, a lot of people, it is a touchy subject because nobody really wants to talk about death. So it maybe is something that is ignored, or, if you are on your deathbed, you do want to kind of tie up those loose ends, and to have a safe space to do that with, and to have someone who can accompany you doing that, it's almost like emotional hospice.
Yeah. And we don't have, language for it. We don't have tools, so we get overwhelmed. The relatives get overwhelmed. And then because of that, because we freeze, again, our nervous system, we freeze. We don't know what to do. We hand this beautiful sacred process over to hospitals where people and where doctors are and neon lights, and then boom, it's done. And then the grief sets in of the relatives, because then we're like, oh, we should have done this differently. So I'm very, very passionate about talking about this. And also, why wait to the very end of life? Why not, this is really how my journey went. I did this training and became an end-of-life doula. And I thought, no, I need to talk about it and bring it right into the middle of the life. We need to engage with this topic right here, right now. Because we are actually having mini deaths, practice deaths every day, all day. Our cells die. We are renewing. We're losing a job. Our friendships end. There's so much, right? A restaurant closes. We can't go to it anymore. We loved it. The pandemic really, really showed us what it means. And there were all these little deaths, and, people didn't have language. But if we have language and if we get comfortable, then when the real big death happens, we also can show up to it in His grace.
That was a beautiful explanation. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're on the topic of difficult things, you yourself have gone through some very difficult things. And like I said, as we've gotten to know each other, I've had an opportunity personally for you to share those things with me. And I know that some of the things that you've experienced could have easily broken some other people. But you've used these opportunities and I guess many deaths to flourish and show others what's possible. And I want everybody to have an opportunity to hear your story so that they can have a much deeper understanding of you and what you do. So the first question I wanted to ask is, what was early life like for you?
As so many people, I have hardly any memories. It was blocked out because it wasn't safe for my body to access what was going on. So when I look back at my childhood, I hardly have memories. I don't really know. I have like this very spotted memories of maybe I was 3 years old, then I was 6 years old, 9. There's a few memories, but I couldn't tell you the daily life. It's really interesting. So what was going on that, if you would just zoom out, I would say, oh, I grew up in a very nice family. There was no obvious anything. But, I grew up in Germany. My parents are a generation, post-war generation. There were children in the Second World War. So, and in Germany, even up to this very day, there's a lot of unprocessed trauma. It's in the land, it's in the bodies, it's in the air. And Germany officially has done a good job to sort of remember the war and what the atrocities, but on a deep personal level, it was never really allowed to access. So, I understand that. I'm not, blaming my parents, but growing up in a family where emotions are untouchable, I was part of that upbringing.
Now, something you said was that you don't have a lot of memories of your childhood. And I guess as we begin to learn more about the brain and trauma, we can understand that the brain will sometimes block certain things as a way to protect you. Do you feel like that is kind of what your experience was?
Yeah, exactly. So I can tell you, for instance, when I was 6, my aunt committed suicide. And I have now, looking back, I have a very good understanding of the psychology of my mother. But I can just imagine what that did to her. And I also understand now that I had to be a grown up. I had to support her emotionally as a small child. So that was way too complex for a little girl. And my body just blocked out the pain, the doubts, the frustration, the anger, or whatever all that was, the sadness. So I don't, otherwise I wouldn't be able to cope with it. So it was my protector. I mean, amazing intelligence, actually, that our bodies offer that up. We're like, no, this is not safe. So I'm going to just take this whole memory away from you because that makes, and you can go on with yourself. So I'm a very positive person, and I'm always over and over again, I'm amazed about the intelligence our body offers up to us.
Mm. I mean, as we learn more and more, like the complexities and the intelligence, even like, you could say behind the scenes, because these things are happening with you having, consciousness or not. Like these parts develop to protect you and your brain does what it needs to protect you. And there's a consciousness, I feel like, that is there innately. And once we are able to understand that, like you said, we can go back and look at the divine intelligence, I believe. And then, that little girl that was being protected, at some point you have to go back and allow her to feel safety and, kind of rescue her from the things that she had to endure. All of us who have experienced difficult things.
Yeah. And while you're saying that, I want to add this word like this, the gifts of trauma. I want to offer a reframe because yes, all of us carry these crazy stories, and there's the meaning we give, and then there's this trauma and it disconnects us. But the coping strategies, which are our protectors, when we look at it from the other side, there's a gift in it. For instance, if I continue with my personal story, so I needed to leave. I became a nomad. I had this, another gift maybe is my curiosity. So I traveled the world. I lived all around the world. I became a photographer, right? I lived in Africa, in Asia, Singapore, then the US. I mean, so it became this going away from my family of origin because I basically ran away. I mean, not like literally, but in that sense, I ran away from my family, from my family structure. But then it became my gift because I was out in the world and I became this photographer. So does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it could be difficult for someone to look at trauma or painful events as a gift, but what they may force you to do in the moment could be considered a gift because you may have just been stagnant and remained in a situation that wasn't healthy or could have harmed you. So what it pushes you to do, those are gifts. And then if you're allowed to go back and circle back to those moments where the pain and the trauma initiated and you can heal those things, then I feel like it can come full circle.
Yeah, it's both. If we have the courage to look at it, then we can also see the gift. And for instance, when you, again, if that sense of maybe somebody is not good at something as a child, meaning you give, often they become, CEOs in companies because they become workaholics, they become perfectionists. So when and then it's debatable, yes, is it a gift or not? But, there is often amazing success stories out of this drama reaction, out of these coping strategies. And I feel we should really also bring some attention that there are gifts in there. And it's not just something we carry as a burden, but it also somehow, it can elevate us to things we would have never done otherwise.
I remember the first time I heard that perfectionism was a trauma response, and I said, "Oh my God, that's crazy," because you become a workaholic because you're trying to avoid um, the pain of feeling like maybe you're not enough or you're not good enough. So your work ethic becomes quote unquote perfect so that you don't make any mistakes to avoid feeling the feelings associated with not being good enough. So like you said, you may become the CEO of a company, or you may, have success in, the workforce, but that success comes at a cost, and it's whatever it was that disconnected you from your sense of innate worth to begin with. And I just
Right.
thought to myself, wow, that's incredible.
But that's where the actual work, I think, sits. When we can come to understand, wow, I did this because I didn't feel, good enough. And to really bring understanding and heal that younger part, but then also see the gift, then we can live with the gift, because I think it will inform the way we then maybe show up we are maybe less perfect, but we still use the energy and the knowledge which we gained. There's a healing. And as you said, it's a circle, and that's where the integration happens.
Right.
The implicit becomes explicit, and then, we heal it and integrate it.
Yeah. I wanted to build off of like your story a bit. And I remember telling me that you lost your brother at the tender age of 23. And that was so difficult for me to even have to accept. So for you having such a tragic loss, how are you and your family affected by that?
Mm. Yeah, again, my memory gets very spotty around that even. It's
Mm.
fascinating. I think my body found a way to cope when there's difficult situation. It just sort of takes it away. My mom, it's like a soap opera in a way, because what happened was that he, drowned. And I was living at that time in Indonesia, and my mom was in the hospital having a hip replacement operation. And my dad called me and said, I can only tell your mom that this happened when I know on which airplane you're, and when you're arriving back home.
Mm.
It was, intense. It was very intense. My mom didn't have the tools. She fell into a depression. My dad did what he knew just to shut it off. No emotions. And I stayed for a few months with them, and then I returned back to my life in Indonesia. And because I was exposed to Buddhism, it really actually helped me to be with that.
I'm so sorry that happened, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you for asking.
There was something else that you had
Yeah,
to, I guess, get through a bit. And also that was a difficult divorce, and you referred to that as a huge death and a gift. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you and how it could be a death and a gift all in one?
Yeah, I feel so. In general, I truly believe that all these hardships we get to experience, if we have the courage and the bravery to look at it in a fresh way, to be with it, it's a gift, because it's a way in to engage with our shadow and to understand what it means to be impermanent, to have these death experiences, to engage with love and loss, and then, heal through that and grow through that. I feel like these are invitations for growth. I say, yes, my divorce, I feel like it was a death. I died. A part of me, a dream of me died. And a vision of a life I thought this is my future died. My community died. So I was invited to really look at it, and I chose to look at it. And because of this death experience, I got to restructure myself again. I got to be like, no, I don't need this anymore. This is an amazing opportunity. Maybe this is it. This is who I need to be. And that what catapulted me to become an end of life doula, actually, because I got so curious around this, what it means to die. What does that really, do to us?
It's funny how we can refer to these difficult things that reshape and restructure our lives as mini deaths. And, you're saying you losing the dream of what your future was supposed to be and losing your community. Yeah, that's painful. Like that entire part of you and your life was no more. So I love how you look, or how you say it's an invitation to look at it instead of just shutting down. And, maybe some people would just move somewhere else to another state and like just almost become a nomad and not have any friends and not do this and not do that. But the way you're looking at it is you're looking at it as an opportunity to become something more and to become something better out of that death.
Yeah, and I want to add, it wasn't an easy process. I can admit I was on a sofa. I don't even smoke. I smoked for 6 months. I was on the sofa. And you know what smoking does? It's, again, the nervous system. It's inhaling and exhaling. So it calmed my anxiety. And that's why a lot of people actually smoke. Because, and then, there's nicotine. So then the addiction sits in because we're, the body wants the nicotine. But in when we really just look at it, it really calms the nervous system. And we do breath work. We don't have to smoke, but that's really what happened.
Wow.
You see people outside the office all the time because they're stressed of the job and they need to smoke a cigarette. They calm down. The nervous system calms down, and then you can go back and feel calm. Your brain ventral energy again. You can go on with your day.
Wow. I never thought about smoking as actually breathing, but it is breath work. Wow.
Yeah.
So something that you're obviously well versed in based on what you've shared is grief. And you're also very passionate about it. So I wanted to ask, how would you define grief? And what are some ways that you help others get through and process their grief?
Grief is love with no close to it. I think it's an expression of our love. The more we grieve something, the more it shows us that we care for something. And it's wild, it's feral. It doesn't come on a orderly timeline. It's a tsunami of everything, all the emotions we have, of rage, of sadness, of anger, you name it, upset, and it makes us so vulnerable, and it's often overwhelming. And I think there's so much grief currently in the world. There's the grief, of the environment, of our beautiful Mother Earth, political systems, the wars. And yeah, I mean, I feel like really invited into that grief space right now. And also, grief is normal. Way back, not in this sort of modern world, we had communities and we would come together and share our grief. But now we're alone with it. And we're not meant to be alone with it. We're supposed to share it. And it brings me back, as we sort of touched on this vulnerability.
Grief is love with no place to go. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Wow. That's deep. That is really deep. Thank you for sharing that. It's obvious that you have a lot of experience with the things that you're speaking about, and you've had extensive training in several modalities. And from speaking to you and getting to know you, what I hear and feel most when you express yourself is compassion and that willingness to be vulnerable. But I wanted to ask, how tough can self-compassion and vulnerability be for individuals who've had to disconnect from themselves and had to, block those things?
It is very, very hard. I think we're so harsh on ourselves. I think it's easier in my experience, to have compassion, empathy for somebody else. But then when it comes to our own story, our own beliefs, our own family constellations, we're very, very hard. So a way to sort of highlight this standard, this double standard we actually hold without judgment, it's just is to maybe, bring an example of like if I would say I work with a person and I feel there's this resistance bringing self-compassion towards that little person. Then I can use another child and suddenly this compassion flourishes out of our hearts because it's not us. But then there's a way to bring it back. And I think that is, for me, it's such a magical moment when that happens, when a person can really bring and allow that self-compassion, that it's not their fault what happened to them when they were little, that they had to protect themselves, that they had to close up, that they had to abandon their authentic self. I think there's so much healing in that.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that. And it's funny how we may not have the ability to have self-compassion, but as you mentioned, like if you were to bring another child into the picture instantly, that love and compassion and that care is there, but we may not know how to give it to ourselves. And I think that is where sometimes the most difficult work can be. And when let's say you work with someone and you allow them to be able to reflect some of that outward self-compassion back to themselves, how does that feel? What's that like?
For me or for with my client?
For you, seeing it when you help your client?
Oh, I find that so humbling. I think that's it. The work I do is so humbling anyway, because sometimes people share things with me they have never shared ever before. And I get to be that person they trust that it can come up. And when a healing moment happens like this, or an aha moment of that, that self-love can actually come forward. It's so nourishing and touching.
I want to quote one
I
of
don't
your
know what else
posts.
to say.
I want to quote one of your posts, speaking about vulnerability. You said the rejection you risk by being vulnerable is worth the love you will find by being vulnerable. Vulnerability is the prerequisite for a truly meaningful life. So how can someone slow down and allow those words to really resonate in their body?
By first, again, connecting and creating the safety and bringing awareness to the nervous system. And, if we never learned what it means to be vulnerable or to have self-compassion, it's a process, but by slowly, so I feel also by me I lead by example, right? By me being vulnerable, I create that safety that indicates to your nervous system, it is safe here to share. And in the work I do over multiple sessions, this container of safety is solidified. And so then this vulnerability can come and we relearn, we reparent these patterns become weaker, these old patterns, and we restructure and say, wow, and through that there's a new aliveness comes forward. Because in the very conjunction, in this intersection of vulnerability, lays also the intimacy we seek so badly, right? We need to be seen. That is at our core needs. We want to be seen. We want to be acknowledged. And we only can be seen and acknowledged if we make ourselves visible. And that is the vulnerability. But if we have only learned that we'll be judged, that we will get hurt, that we will, we have to contract, that we will be punished, it's a dangerous undertaking. So that's the work. And when we understand that being vulnerable is safe, that I, can share myself, that you won't judge me, that you actually welcome my vulnerability, that is rewriting the pattern. That is healing. That's integrating back together.
Thank you for
Building
that.
the connection between, head and heart.
Yeah, re-embodiment. Because if you learn that you can have safety without judgment and be vulnerable, I think that allows you to get out of your head and to have that ability to be in your body and feel your feelings and feel safe. Speaking of safety and a felt sense of safety, how important is that for healing and growth, like true deep healing and growth?
It's the base. We cannot heal if we don't feel safe. Our nervous system, we're alert. We either go into, fight, flight, or torso. We're not open. We need to be in ventral energy, in the life. We need to be in social engagement. And that can only happen when we feel safe and our nervous system perceives to be safe. Actually, this is a great segue. Can I just quote? I wanted to read this to you. I mentioned this earlier. So one of the modalities I work in is also focusing. Eugene Chandlin, he was with Carl Rogers in the 60s. He's a legend, right? Carl Rogers in the beginning, Jungian and so on. So Eugene Chandlin created this modality called focusing. And it is around slowing down, pausing, and connecting to the felt sense. And it is not mindfulness. It is, I would describe felt sense. When there's a felt sense, a truth comes forward. It might not be words. It might be a color, a picture, something, but you feel there's something true. Maybe we have this experience when we wake up in the morning after a dream and you can't really hold on to it. By the time you sort of try to make sense, it already morphed into something else. And that's sort of felt sensing. But okay, side story. I wanted to read the quote.
Sure,
I wanted to give the explanation of focusing. So it says, interaction first. When there are two people interacting in a room together, there's only one interaction. Even so, there are two people because the interaction is first. The essence of working with another person is to be present as a living being. And, that's really comes back to safety, right? I come alongside you. I may have all these tools to facilitate for you to feel safe, and so this material can come forward. But I am here with you. I am not somehow on top of you. I am not a person who knows something better. I am just a humble human being. And when your nervous system understands that, that's when we can create safety.
Mm. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. You said that modality was felt sense?
Focusing.
Sorry. Okay. Focusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So something that you help people with is to transform and challenge them by bringing understanding of their trauma and turning their traumas into opportunities for healing, blooming, and growth. How is it that you necessarily do that, and what kind of outcomes have you had?
How do I do that? By connecting with I'm attuned. So I mean, how do I do that? Creating safety, being absolutely present, bringing my curiosity, non-judgment. So through that, I think one of the most underrated qualities, again, in therapy and in our social structures right now, is presence. Because to give somebody unattended presence, abiding presence, without already forming a response, but just allowing and seeing that person to express themselves, that in itself is so healing.
Yeah, especially if the person has never had an opportunity to be heard. And like you said, a lot of people listen to respond. So as someone is talking, they're already formulating a response, which means they're not even allowing an opportunity for the person. Exactly. And if we have that experience all our lives, we may learn that what we have to say isn't important.
No, yeah, or we say things to please the other.
Right.
We're hoping subconsciously when we say things which are not even authentic to us, that then that person gives us attention, and then through that they may actually give us the love we seek. So we're abandoning ourselves again.
Yeah. So much. It seems like safety, like you said, is the core. But another one of the modalities that you use is called felt sense, and that's a polyvagal model. Can you explain kind of what that is?
Yeah. Yeah, this is beautiful because I just sort of went into the focusing. And then, so Jen Winhall, I'm studying with her. She came up with that felt sense polyvagal modality. So she's bringing focusing, where we connected the felt sense together with the polyvagal. So the felt sense is interoception. That's what happens inside of us. And the polyvagal is neuroception. And it's so beautiful because it's a bottom-up approach. It's whole the body, the nervous system and the felt sensing. There is some truth. So when I connect with my clients we bring awareness to what's going on. Like when the truth comes, let's say there is an addiction and the person is beating themselves up about drinking again. And so, what is the nervous system around that, right? It might be in dorsal. It might be completely like frozen. I'm doing this. I am not worthy, right? So then we can bring together the truth of the felt sense, and there is a life forward notion and movement. And through that awareness, bringing these two together, there's enormous healing possible. Because it's through the body.
Something else that you do is called compassionate inquiry. How do you integrate that in with all the other modalities? Or first of all, I guess, what is compassionate inquiry?
Compassionate inquiry is Dr. Gabor Mate started this modality. It's a trauma-informed psychotherapeutic way of being. And I would say it is my main structure, my main container. And I mean, the word already says it. It's a compassionate inquiry. Again, creating safety. I come with my curiosity. I invite you to be curious and come to this compassionate inquiring into your history, into your body. It's also somatic based, what's going on in your body. Maybe you share an incident, what happened last week in your real life. And through that, it's this segue into a pattern, the way you reacted. And, I would invite you, well, how does that feel right now? So you share this with me. How does that feel in your body? And so there's that sort of, and then again, slowly we can bring implicit memories up, make them explicit, and then integrate them, and healing can actually happen.
I know that you had an opportunity to work with Gabor Mate. What was it like learning this modality with him?
Very inspiring. Actually, I appreciate everybody I got to learn with. And Gabor is so unique, and I value his courage to speak the truth. And I feel, for me, this is my own opinion, I really feel he lives a life in integrity. And he is so vulnerable he's always saying, don't put me on a pedestal. I come with the I don't know mind. I am you. And that, again, he lives what he is teaching. And I value that. I find it very inspiring.
The name of your Instagram page, and I guess your business, is Permission to Bloom. And what are some ways that you help your clients give themselves permission to bloom?
By helping them, the work we do in our sessions, that is a way, of already, I feel like even before, when somebody calls me or contacts me, I applaud the brave act of having the curiosity to want to learn more about self. So that is, maybe putting the seed in order so something can bloom. I share meditations. I share writing rituals. I feel that actually even the sessions I want my clients to feel, wow, I'm here in this time. I'm dedicating this time because I am learning something about myself. I get to be a better person. I get to know myself better. And that is a form of blooming, right? So, it's all sort of interconnected. It's a journey. And we start with putting a little seed, and then we nurturing it. Hopefully it will come to bloom.
So let's say somebody listens to this episode and they want the opportunity to bloom, and they decide that they want to work with you as your client. What could they expect to receive from you?
My presence, my understanding, my non-judgment, and yeah, I think that's for me, that's the core, right? And to create the safety we create. Again, what I said earlier, for this material to come forward. My commitment, actually, I feel very committed to the work I do with my client. Yeah. It's a mutual commitment.
I see. Thank you for sharing that. With all the work that you are doing to help others and how committed you are to provide safety and allow people to be re-embodied, what is it that you want people to know most?
That healing is available to everybody. That it's a courageous choice. That this choice is given to us every day, so many times. That if we turn towards what pains us, it's, let's say there's an addiction or something. It also helps us to cope with things. So there's again this intersection. It helps us and it hurts us at the very same time. But if we can come to that reframe and courageously step into that space and face the shadow or get to know our internal landscape, our internal family, that healing is truly available for everybody. And that this life is very short. It's a short journey, and that these invitations are that we can really show up to our potential. It is available. I truly wholeheartedly believe that.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I think that what I've gotten from my opportunity to get to know you is that, we are vastly different in our experiences and our cultural backgrounds. But at the same time, difficult experiences affect us all the same because we're all human. We're all brothers and sisters. We all share the same emotional makeup, nervous systems, etc. And just your willingness to be brave enough to go deep, to find the things that may be keeping us stifled or stuck, or, at a crossroad where we have to make a decision or stay put. You show and you give examples of what to do and how to do that. And the way you do it in such a loving and compassionate manner is, I feel, something that anyone who works with you will have a huge opportunity to heal and to get to the other side. And if they've had a bunch of mini deaths like we spoke about, they'll have the opportunity to see those as invitations to grow and to become more and to do better. So I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to see that and to share space and time with you. And I guess what I want to allow others to do is, if they want to work with you and find you, where would they be able to find you, online or on social media?
Yeah, so social media, it's permission_to_. And then my website, permissiontogroom.org. I think that's the easiest way to connect with me.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
you're welcome. Welcome. Thank you. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to share this space with you and to allow my listeners to hear your story and the way you go about providing safe spaces for healing. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, your knowledge, and what you do.
And thank you for allowing me to speak and share myself and creating the container for this conversation. So I'm also really grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this with me. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for how you do it.